Hi there, everyone. This week I did a long series, not a long series, a series on how to deal with family members during the holidays. I know what you're thinking. It's only October, but that's okay because some things we're going to need to practice on. And especially if we're not used to setting boundaries and things like that. And since it is our family, they know all the buttons to push and everything to get us in a tizzy. So I thought I would. I've got my notes here. I just want to go over 5 things, and each one of those 5 things I do usually 3 different techniques for it, just to keep it simple. There's a whole lot of ways to do this. I don't want you to think this is the only way, but I'm also using a new program, so just bear with me while I try to put up things for you. Anyway, here we go. So this is going to be how we deal with uh, family members that like to get in arguments, that have different beliefs than you do, and like to start arguments, and just some that are annoying. We all have them. And I know what you're thinking. Well, you must have had a horrible family if you're having to make a whole series out of it. No, actually, I had a lot of fun. I mean, I don't know if all my family members did, but we had 2 rules when we had big get-togethers. One was no talking about politics or religion, and everybody pretty much stick to that. So, but I did start to feel it once I got older and learning how to navigate that. And even then, it wasn't that bad. But then when I got older, I got to experience it in a much different way. And this is when I was much older. And so I thought, wow, this is what everybody's talking about. And of course, I've been coaching people, and some people come to me. And now I honestly do know what they're talking about. And I knew that I need to start just doing a series. So here we go. And so the first thing we're going to talk about is setting boundaries. And I know this is something you hear all the time, but you really do have to set them. And you have to be willing to go through with them. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. The first thing you've got to learn to do is have clear communication with your family. Now, if you were like me when I was younger, very timid, um, didn't want to ruffle any feathers, got to keep the peace at all times. So if I wanted to say something that I didn't want anybody else to hear, I'd just mumble it, right? So we got to get better than that. We've got to be able to stand up for ourselves. So if you even need to take a class for this is why I start in October. If you need to take a little class for this, that's fine. If you need to talk to your therapist with this, they'll help you through that. They'll help you get that. I need to work on clear communication. You need to learn how to have an assertive voice, how to speak calmly, but get your point across at the same time, where there's no ambiguity. They know exactly what you're talking about. So that's the first thing. I know that seems very elementary, but we got to start somewhere. And the next thing is to actually set up your boundaries. So this is what takes a little time. Once again, you've got to figure out what is a boundary for you. Some people have never even thought about it because they've never been able to have them. So this is where you get out your pen and paper and you start setting up those boundaries, and you see what's most important to you. You see what's, just kind of go down, most important to least important, but they still are your boundaries. And then once you do set those boundaries, you have to understand, you have to follow through. Because once you follow through once, you usually don't have to follow through again. Now, there's cases where people do, don't get me wrong, but on the most part, it'll shut them down pretty fast. So they'll just know. They're not going to get a rise out of you. That's what they're wanting, and it's not going to work for them. So that's the very first thing we have to do. And that's why you can see now, while we've been talking about the things we've been talking about, I've been kind of leading up to this. So you just get a little bit at a time. So we've done that, and then we're going to choose our battles. I know, that's no fun. You got to figure out what's most important to you. You've got to, first of all, work on what triggers you. And the family knows exactly how to push your buttons. So that takes some self-reflection. So we talked about that earlier in another series I did. Go back and watch certain series. I try to title them as much as I can. But this one was on standing up for yourself, things like that. Having power, even though you're going through trauma. Go look at those. We'll talk about self-reflection in those. And so you have to be willing to look at yourself and see what you need to do. to be able to know how to communicate this. And you also gotta, like, if it's something little and really not worth it, just let it slide. So once again, you have to learn how to let things slide. Just let it slide. But if it is something bigger, you've got to voice your what you don't want to do there. And a good way, it's just one little example, okay? So you have this one family member that always likes to start arguments, always likes to get things going. And you know who, if you have one, you know exactly who it is. And so what you want to do is say, I really get real frustrated. Don't say, but use the word frustrated. I get frustrated when all you do is get angrier and angrier. Can we talk about this? Or would you be willing? Because I would be willing to talk about this if you keep it down. But if you can't do it, then I'm not going to talk to you about it. I mean, you just have to understand that. And they'll usually work with you. They honestly will. Because I'm going to go over some steps later, the reason why they will. And then, what's the next one? Oh, I said, hang on a second. And then focus on the solutions, not just the argument. Like I said, if they want to talk about a certain thing, and your family doesn't have that rule like we did, sorry guys, then be willing to work with them, and they honestly usually will work with you. And so do those things. And the next thing we're going to do is to take breaks when we need them. Now, taking breaks is not a sign of weakness. In fact, it's a sign of refocusing so you can be strong. And that's good. That's actually a good thing to take breaks. Sometimes if you can, just take some deep breaths right there and then. But don't make it real obvious. You can do it without being too obvious. Practice on people now, and you'll get used to doing it. My mom used to say when I would get in a stressful situation, I'd just blow, I just go a lot. And I didn't even know I was doing it. So if you could just go in and out and take just a few deep breaths, if you can get off to yourself a little bit, if it's that stressful and you can get off to yourself a little bit, you can do some meditation, you can do some yoga poses, you can, just do all kinds of things. And another thing that you get to do, take a break, which is the easiest, which is what I did. Go play with kids. Just go out and you just focus solely on them for 5 to 10 minutes, and they'll love it, and you'll love it. And you'll play the games they're playing, and you're not even thinking about the other stuff. And nobody usually gives you a hard time about that because they don't want to have to watch the kids all the time. So, once again, it's not a form of weakness. It's actually a form of strength to be able to take the breaks when you need them. So, we've done that. And then we're going to start practicing empathy. And you're like, why do I have to be empathetic during this situation? What actually helps, and that's what I was talking earlier, they'll probably work with you. Because what you're going to do when you're practicing empathy is you're going to put yourself in their shoes for one thing. You're going to actually ask them questions. And you're going to remember, they grew up in this family too. There may be some trauma there for them too. And this is how they deal with it. Okay? Also, you're going to do the active listening, which I'm going to go over in more detail in the next step. That way, you're giving all your focus to them, and they will feel that. They will feel validated for their feelings. They will feel validated that someone's actually listening to them. You don't have to agree with them at all, but you can actively listen. And they will be able to tell your fears and all this they'll do this too, because they're having someone that's taking them seriously. And then, this is the hard one for a lot of us because of especially the stuff that's going on right now. Practice non-judgment. I know that's hard. But once again, if you're putting yourself in their shoes, you don't know what they've been through. You don't even know what they went through that day. So be sure to practice non-judgment. And then we're going to talk about active listening. Sorry guys, I promise the next one will be a little bit smoother. But there's some actual things that you can do to help them understand that you're actually listening. Okay, first of all, you keep your eyes straight on them. You're taking everything, and you're going to listen to them. You're not just listening so you can argue with them. They're going to actually listen to them. And when you do have questions, be sure to ask them in love. Okay, or if you can't do love, ask them with non-judgment, because that will help them a lot. They'll feel validated, and that's how you're going to keep this down for yourself. And then you're also going to use your verbal and nonverbal cues, like nodding your head. And if you don't understand, make sure they understand. They can see that you don't understand, and they'll say, what do you not understand, or something like that, and you can tell them. And then this is one you may not have done a lot of, or you have, but it's called reflective listening. And you've heard people say, so what I hear you saying is, well, let's try not to use that, okay? But you can kind of wrap up what they said, and that way they know you were listening and you were doing it with no judgment. And you'll be surprised. You really will be surprised that they will actually respect you too. So I just want you to remember, I know we think about everybody else during the holidays, but these are your holidays too. These are where you make memories too. So I'm going to put this in a blog next week, and I'll have it all written out for you. But go out there and have a great week. And if you have any questions, be sure to ask me. Hope you have a great day.